Greetings panel. I hope I'm clearly audible to everyone. Just to confirm, I'm clearly audible? Yes. Noted. I will be starting with my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, let us get some definitions out of the way first. Let us understand what do we mean by shaping the global economy. We as side proposition do not need to prove to you that the global south will be the only factor when considering the global economy's future. We just have to prove to you that it is going to be the major factor or the driving force or the shaping factor. That is, it is going to have a considerable degree of influence, and we have 10 unique perspectives as to why this is going to be a considerable degree of influence. Before that, we have a historical perspective for you. Panel, understand that the reason why the global north and the global south divide exists is largely due to colonization of the global south by the global north. That is, majority of the global north countries have been colonizer countries, and majority of the global south countries have been colonized countries, and their resources have been exploited by the global north at some point or the other. The global north has built its economies in the past and is reaping the current benefits of this economic growth by exploiting the economies of the global south previously. This brings us to our first constructive panel. Our first constructive or our first perspective is the minerals perspective. That is, the vast majority of the crucial mineral deposits in the modern day world are present in the global south. What do we mean by crucial mineral deposits? In the modern day, manufacturing in terms of, say, semiconductors, manufacturing in terms of electric vehicles, manufacturing in terms of solar panels, etc. are extremely crucial in order to drive your economies forward. The resources required for these, such as lithium, such as tellurium, such as uranium, etc., are present primarily in the global south. Perspective number 2, international organizations. Panel, understand that the most relevant international organizations in the modern world are not military alliances, are not the United Nations. The most relevant international organizations, I'll take the POIs later, in the modern day world are, say, the SAARC organization or the ASEAN organization or the BRICS organization or the BIMSTEC organization or the African Union organization. These organizations have a considerably higher degree of power as they are able to collaborate with local actors significantly better. They are able to understand issues better because they have more context, because they themselves are part of those areas geographically, and this means that these organizations actually dictate what international policy and foreign policy looks like. But what is this leading to? The international actor influence is largely with the global south too. I'll take your POI right now.
A lot of mineral resources that you mentioned in the global south are still controlled by the north due to colonialism.
Understand, panel. Noted. Panel, note that the fact of the matter is we have to prove that it will be shaped by the global south. Even if the resources to exploit said minerals are present with the global north, we don't concede that. Even if hypothetically they were, issue is that ultimately these resources are present with the global south. China has a policy that it does not sell silicon or lithium to nations of the West in order to create a monopoly. These nations are fiscally very sound. They will not sell these resources at a detriment to themselves. That POI has been successfully rebutted. Moving on to constructive number 3, the AI perspective or the technological perspective. In the modern day, semiconductors, manufacturing, etc. are extremely important, and in these sectors, a cheaper rate is available in the global south. That is, large language models such as DeepSeek or Q2Q, etc. are present in the global south compared to significantly more expensive alternatives in the global north, and simultaneously, the rate of development is significantly higher in the global south. Take your PI later. Labor perspective. The population of the global north is aging. That is, panel, because this population is aging, you have to pay more for their healthcare. Simultaneously, their productivity is decreasing. This means that the labor force of the global south is significantly more poised to economic growth compared to the global south. Second point, labor is significantly cheaper in the global south, which means that all manufacturing must be done in the global south. When this manufacturing is done in the global south, it is up to the global south what they manufacture, because they have the resources, they have the capacity to manufacture. The West will send them contracts to manufacture. Sure, if they simply don't build those industries, the West cannot dictate what they manufacture. The global south has a unique advantage where they have the factories and they have the resources. They get to decide what they choose to manufacture. POI right now, please.
So you mentioned that DeepSeek has been built, but it has been proven by OpenAI that they had stolen, actually Norse built OpenAI's data store. What is your opinion?
All right. Panel, understand that DeepSeek has been built at a significantly lower cost, and the quote-unquote stealing that they're referring to is simply using of a database. Every single AI large language model uses other large language models' databases. That is why they are databases. Every large language model that does not use them will simply be rendered incompetent. In order to be competent, you have to use the same databases. Their POI has been successfully rebutted. Moving on to the GDP growth perspective. Panel, understand that the vast majority of the highly growing economies of the modern day are economies of the global south. Economies that have a 5% plus growth rate are economies of the global south. Economies that have sustainable levels of inflation and not hyperinflation and not deflation are economies of the global south. Whereas in the global north, in the comparative, you have extremely low development rates, you have potentials for deflation, you have economic spirals, you have repeated changes of government, etc., etc. Moving on to the next point, currency monopolization has been locked out. That is due to the presence of, say, Nostro-Vostro accounts between India and Russia following the sanctions on Russia. We have successfully de-dollarized ourselves, that we do not have to depend on the Swiss system anymore. More constructives by my deputy. With that, please vote proposition.
So I am the leader of opposition, starting my speech on a self count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here I go. So the term global south is surging, should be retired, said Stuart Patrick in his report, in his article. So let's come to the very basic definition that the proposition leader failed to expand on. He doesn't roll about the term world economy. World economy is a network of financial, technical, industrial setups that is very dominantly controlled by the global north from the past and is controlled by the global north, be in the terms of currency, innovation, or finance. And when we talk about global south is a collection of economically unstable, politically fragmented, and tech-lagging dependency nations that are dependent on global north for, say, currency, trade, and all the security purposes they seek to. So the very first perspective that the opposition brings here on the table is the economic perspective. The global north dominates economically the global south because they have larger GDP per capita shares, they have larger market shares, they have larger industrial expansion in the term of economy. The second perspective that we bring here on the table is the scientific innovation. When we talk about global north, when we have countries like US, Russia, when we have big countries, they have vast scientific depth and they have vast research and development that is happening and that actually caters to the growth in the world. And coming to the third perspective, that is dependency on the north. When we talk about the term global south, it was actually catered because of the developing nations that are very dependent on the global north, and it was developed way back 50 to 60 years back, and still it has not recovered due to that definition and still has dominance. Productive time, that dominance by global north. The fourth perspective, that is the corruption. The corruption rates are extremely high in global south. They are politically corrupted, politically fragmented. There are various examples of, say, African nations. They have politically fragmented examples of China and various other examples. The fifth perspective is the brain drain. When we talk about global south nations, they have students, they have youth that is actually brain drained and they want to go to these global north nations for better opportunities and better lifestyle, better living. So how the world will be shaped by global south countries. Yes, PR, please.
Why is the entirety of the honourable opposition's case based on things as they are happening now when this debate is clearly about the future of the global
Yes, to that answer, because we are talking on the present is because they lack so much, there is so much diverse difference between the global north and south, and there is no considerable action being done by the global south that it will actually shape to lead to the lead the world economy by future. The sixth perspective that the opposition bringing here actually counters that POI also is the debt trap. When we talk about global south, they are engulfed in a lot of debt trap. You have African countries, you have low-income countries that have been debt trapped internally and by the global north countries. When you have, they take loans from the other countries, even when you talk about China, there is a debt trap happening in global south. The seventh perspective is the technological perspective. So when we talk about technology, we talk in the latest terms, cyber attacks, AI, we talk about a lot of patents that are happening, and global north countries like US and the European Union actually lead in this whole domain of countries. Yes, Pierre, please.
Even if a developed quote-unquote Western nation is growing at, say, 1% a year and a Eastern nation is growing at 10% a year, that Eastern nation is projected to take over that Western nation economically and militarily, etc. Engage.
Yes, so to the answer to the PI, you have not provided, you have actually factually created a scenario, this is not supported by a stat, and secondly, even if I assume this is happening, they are actually, I have answered previously, they are actually engulfed in a lot of debt and a lot of dominance by the global north that actually hinders their progress, and they are still developing nations that actually do not have a very proper policy plan. So the next Eighth perspective is the institutional power. So when we talk about the global north, the US and all these countries, these have actually there are a lot of institutes, say World Bank, IMF, the World Trade Organization, they have a lot of UN, they have a lot of institutions that are actually working and predominantly working in the sphere to control the whole world and shape the whole world, even in economical terms, financial, military, in any terms you can say here in the modern times. The ninth perspective is the ease of doing business. So when this is actually been shared by my previous points also, when we talk, why the youth migrate to the foreign nations, because there is ease of doing business. You have the best example of European nations where the youth come from foreign to invest in high numbers. You have Silicon Valley where people come to invest in. The 10th perspective is the geopolitical challenge. That is a lot of regional mess, say in the South China Sea and Middle East is created by this global South nations. The 11th perspective here is the energy. Global North nations have a net zero emission target, talk of clean energy, where the global South nations fail because their main focus in to reduce poverty, which they fail to actually address. The 12th perspective is environment. When we talk about global south, there is a lot of pollution, there is a lot of deaths. Various reports support that there is a lot of pollution happening there. The next perspective is the currency. Dollar is dominant in the world. Around 50% is dominated by dollar, and dollar is the major currency here in the world. The next perspectives are health and infra. When we talk about COVID-19 vaccine, the industry was predominantly controlled by US and the EU, which actually shaped the world economy then. And there is lack of unity that is happening between these countries that will be explained by my member and DPM. Proud to propose. Thank you.
Point of order. Around the 15 to 20 second mark, the Honourable Opposition Leader mentioned to myself using personal pronouns. Unparliamentary.
Please don't open the floor again while the debate is on.
Around the 15 to 20 second mark, the Honourable Opposition Leader mentioned the Proposition Leader using personal pronouns. This is unparliamentary as per the briefings. Personal pronouns are not allowed, only designations are allowed.
Any point of order for the side? Can we read it for the order?
Yeah, you can.
POI has been protected hand raised.
PY
Raised in protected time. It was 4 seconds short of 4 to 10 seconds short of my protected time.
Am I perfectly audible? Deputy Prime Minister, starting speech in 3, 2, and 1. Rebuilding on the perspectives my Prime Minister brought, and then expanding on 4 new perspectives and then 1 rebuttal. First, minerals. Paris Agreement's goal are of achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2040. This exclusively happens using the mineral-rich resources present in the global south. This is true because of Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile, who are collectively called as the lithium triangle. This suggests they have rich mineral deposits, which are key in developing these sectors. Second, international organizations. Historical precedents have said that UN has been incompetent in dealing with multiple in territorial disputes and international disputes, which is why other organizations like BRICS, like ASEAN and SAARC have taken the place in terms of deciding what solutions and what solvency there is in terms of territorial disputes, etc. Third, tech. AI has seen rapid development in global south at extremely less comparative costs. This is true because of QTQ and DeepSeek achieving similar results at very less investment costs. Second, Chile, Uruguay, Mexico, and Egypt are avenues of development of AI because of their energy efficient systems and the development of energy efficiency. Third, labor. Average age in Europe is 44.5, in America it's 39, and it's India it's 29. The difference lies in that as the aging population grows, the cost of labor increases, the productivity decreases, which is why as a consequence the production that a country has decreases. This is not true in Global South because the average age in Global South is now much more. POI.
So you mentioned about the youth population, but according to INR, 85% of the population in Global South is at risk of losing the job to automation. What is your...
If the risk of automation is something that honorable opposition brings, risk of automation is existing in Global North as well. It's not something that Global South exclusively deals with. Fifth, GDP growth. The growth of GDP is in China is 6%, in India it's 7%, in UK it's 0.1%, in US it's 2.5%. This is the significant difference in the percentage of GDP growth that exists. This also rebuts honorable opposition's claim of these countries of Global South being dependent on Global North at all points in time. This is true because of this suggests that these countries have significant GDP growth, which could lead to a rising trend of autonomy. This could be seen in the development of BRI and the GDP growth, POI.
So the South also has a higher population, 85% of the world population is in South, therefore GDP per capita is very low. Growth doesn't matter there. What is your stance on percent GDP growth?
Percentage GDP growth doesn't account to per capita income. The percentage account for the differences and the growth that exists in these time frames. This is different, and because it is independent on what a country's population is. Fifth, currency. Russia sanctions in 2022 brought forth the problem where India and other Global South countries not being able to trade in US dollars. This led to an adoption of a new Global South currency and adopted a new system to bypass this SWIFT system. This leads to and this supports the rising trend of autonomy, which leads to these countries not being dependent economically, financially, or any other aspect to the Global North. Seventh, investments. Global South is an immensely viable source of investment because of their resources that are present in terms of energy, renewable energy, mineral deposits, etc. Eighth, research. These countries in Global South are immensely valuable in terms of medical and non-medical researches as well because of the investment opportunities present, because of the raw materials that are present in these Global South countries exclusively. This is absent in Global North, which makes the distinction between the Global North and Global South countries. Ninth, space. Space exploration has achieved higher rate of successes, and this is historically true because of the feats ISRO and other Global South space explorative agencies have accomplished, and they've accomplished this at significantly lower costs. 10th, infrastructural development. Rate of development of infrastructure has been ever increasing in Global South. This suggests that this further cements the proof that these Global South countries have a rising trend of autonomy, have a rising trend of development, which suggests that they're not going to be dependent financially or any other aspect in the coming future, which is why they're likely to shape the global future. Secondly, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore have consistently been the ease of business avenues, which is why their Global South opportunities are much more prevalent. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am the Deputy Leader of Opposition, and I'll be starting with my speech in 3, 2, 1. There is a popular saying that goes that if you say a lie several times, it becomes a truth. But here the opposition will not let the proposition propagate their lie and make it a truth. Let's look at the several aspects that we have to take into consideration to have an economic dominance or growth in the world. First is the economic perspective itself. The global north has an immense dominance, and why I'm using the term dominance is because it is so immense such that one stock, S&P 500, is valuable. It's much more valuable than the entire Shanghai Stock Exchange, and the stock market, the New York Stock Exchange, Nasdaq, etc., control over 40% of all stock exchanges. So the dominance is so immense. I'm not able to see my.
Take a pause on the time. Would you like to switch on your this thing, or would you like to wait until we have a generator come?
Could I get another camera? Could we wait? If that's fine, could we wait?
Yes, please.
Oh, ma'am, if someone could hold the light, that would also work.
I can come.
You.
Can somebody ask for the generator, please?
I'll be continuing in 3, 2, 1. Moving on to scientific innovation. Without scientific innovation, economic dominance is not possible. Hence, we see how US and EU has a share of about 80% of all global R&D, and about top 10% of all innovation occurs in the North. So without innovation, how do you expect to lead global dominance? The third is the dependency on the global North. The global South is in shackles. They are about 70% of all FDI into the global South comes from the global North itself. This is a UN CTAD report. Venture capitalist firms which are investing are all from the global North. Now, fourth and one of the most important points is that of corruption. This is a point that shatters the entire proposition argument. Now, these countries, the global South countries, even with their slight economic growth and this and that, we see how a relevant amount of corruption, according to the Corruption Perception Index, is high in these global south countries. So these economic advancements are all going into the pockets of individuals, and hence the country is not developing in and of itself. Fifth point is that of brain drain. Now, all good talent from these countries are moving to the global north, hence aiding the global north in their advancements and leading to suffering of the global south. Sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, loses $4 billion every year due to brain drain. This is a Faster Capital report. And we also see how the debt trap issue is very relevant. The global south is once again in shackles due to debt to the global north. 8.8 trillion debt, according to Roland Berger, with an 8% interest mounting up above and above. Now, seventh is that of the technological perspective. Even though there is DeepSeek and this AI is coming up from China, vast majority of technological advancements, to be precise, 90% of all AI patents come from the global north. 75% of all important patents come from WHO, according to WHO, comes from the global north. Hence, where is the AI argument even leading? Eighth perspective is that of institutional power. The global north has their complete control over all major institutions today, that is IMF, the World Bank, SWIFT financial systems. The proposition came up saying that dependency on SWIFT will be reducing, but even today there is 80% of all global trade happens according to the SWIFT institutions. Thank you. PY, please.
Two things. Firstly, at one point it was 100, now it's 80, it's going to fall down further. Secondly, debt is symmetric. The UK is under...
You can't make statements, thank you. 80% is the present status right now, and due to the debt and such ease of doing business in many such criteria, it reducing below has no scope. Now, ninth, and the most important point is that of ease of doing business. How can economic growth come if businesses are not thriving in these regions? And we see how there is a huge difference, according to the World Bank, in the ease of doing business according to the 2020 index among the global south and global north. Hence, even with the GDP growth and etc., businesses won't be arising from these countries. There is no innovation, no scientific thing, and hence no growth. 10th perspective is that of geopolitical challenges. The global south countries are majorly involved and again burdened by the geopolitical conflicts that they are involved in, be it Russia, Ukraine, Hamas, Gaza, and this is also causing supply chain disruptions to them, which is also a major issue. Pure quick.
Malaysia, Indonesia, and South Korea consistently rank amongst the highest in the ease of doing business index.
Few exceptions. Exceptions are not examples. The examples are not exceptions. Please, if you look at the overall spectrum, according to the World Bank, the global south ranks very, very, very low in this index. Now, fourth is that of labor was a point that the proposition brought into. We have to understand which era are we living in. We are living in the era of AI. AI coming in will create a major, it will wipe off labor, particularly that of unskilled labor, which is most popular within the global south. And hence, we have a large population of people who don't have jobs. Hence, we're leading into a big economic trap getting in there. And even rebutting their other points, the proposition also tried to come up and mold the definition as economic growth in certain or considerable effect, etc. Never mentioned what is the considerable effect. And plus with points such as ease of doing business, tech infrastructure, and etc., this considerable effect also seems to not exist. And hence with several points that already mentioned, be it ease of doing business, financial institutions, etc., the global north will continue its dominance over the global south in economic context. Thank you.
So the PO against the because they asked POI and they said I'll make two statements. You can't ask two statements according to the rules in POI. Moreover, they are continuously disrupting the speech by giving statements and not questions.
PO on the speaker.
Please.
Shall I?
What's a PO? Yeah.
I was cut off in less than 10 seconds for my PO.
But that's what he's responding to. He's saying you make statements, not asking.
Right, ma'am. I was about to phrase it as a question at the 9th second.
Fair enough. Except. What?
Now, the IMF and the World Bank, let me give you an example here. The IMF in 1991 forced India to pursue a liberalization policy against India's own interests. Now, what happened is, 20 years down the line, what did the Indian government say around 5 years ago? Simply that the IMF and the World Bank are dominant financial institutions by the West. They need to be replaced by much more transparent actors. The very idea that the global north for so many years has dominated the global south. The very idea that the IMF and World Bank are these institutions which are indeed evil by nature, or perhaps say subjugated by nature, that cognizance of itself and acknowledgement by the global south has done the global south questioning these institutions. The very reason why the UN and the veto power is being questioned today is because of these practices in the past, which means more likely in the future, the veto power, the IMF and the World Bank will lose dominance altogether because of local institutions, the AU, like the BRICS, like SCO, taking much more primary importance, which means in the future, the global south is going to ultimately flourish. This ultimately means by US investment and the global north itself, the global south will win, and ultimately they are the future itself. Thank you very much.
Point of order.
All right. So I'll just take 5 seconds to set up the timer. Just 5 seconds. And meanwhile, greetings to the jury and all the members present today. And today I'll be going as the opposition whip, strongly opposing the motion that the world economy will be shaped by the global south in the future. So beginning on a self-countdown of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So beginning with the rebuttals, the Prime Minister came and mentioned that shaping considerable changes, where they're ignoring that the influence of the majority countries in the world, if we pay attention to our IMF, World Bank, WTO, UN, WHO, which are majorly controlled by the North. My second rebuttal is against the PM's remarks that colonialization is the cause, where we have to understand that BRI itself has been mentioned as the neo-colonialism in the current aspect by the AU head himself. The third rebuttal is against the PM's remarks that resource wealth is there with the South, which is absolutely a false claim, because African Union's head has mentioned that it is not a resource wealth, it is a resource curse, because 60% of the countries with mineral resources are fighting amongst themselves, and which is a major problem we have to cater to. My fourth rebuttal is against the PM's remarks that SAARC and BRICS, these countries are greater and greater than UN, and these have higher powers, which is absolutely a false claim, because UN controls 200 countries, whereas BRICS has just 5 countries. Moreover, BRICS depends solely 70% on just China, and there is whole decision making by the China himself. My fifth rebuttal is against the PM's remark that AI and tech are cheaper in South, which is a false claim. They are completely ignoring the technicalities of cloud computing. They are completely ignoring the manufacturing cost, R&D cost, which are nowhere comparable to the West. My sixth rebuttal is against the PM's remarks that they mentioned the point about DeepSeek. DeepSeek has been banned in multiple countries, including Italy and other, because they have been providing biased responses. For example, they included Brahmaputra in China. My next rebuttal is against the PM's remarks that labor is cheap. But we have to understand that North has 4 times more productive labor. When this is a fact by ILO. When they have 4x more productive labor, that is not a comparison itself. My next rebuttal is against the DPM's remark that UN is competent, BRICS is not. But we have to understand that inner competition of BRICS, if we see India and China, they are adversaries. We cannot compare two adversaries in a single block, whereas West does not have to cater this. My next rebuttal is against